Hi, this is Tasha Brown. I go to Colorado Christian University online. This is the 12th of February 2019, and I've titled this presentation, The Knowledge I've Gained. This presentation is basically going to be an overview of things that I've learned throughout this class, specifically the things that stick into my memory the very most, and that the most emphasis was put on during this class. Week 1, we learned about common mistakes. A few of these can be like misspelling medications or misspelling times or hours whenever it comes to the route that you're supposed to take with your patients, overlooking things, incorrect documentation in general, and which a lot of the time is caused because of failing to double check. The solution to some of these common mistakes that I came up with is the personal solution that I feel we can do just as human beings is to double check everything. When you're able to guess at a meaning of a term on the basis of its word parts, you must always double check for accuracy because some words have more than one meaning. I got this from our text. And I think that like a possible healthcare-wide solution for this would be automated systems in all healthcare organizations. I know that this is a very prevalent thing already, but not all places, healthcare organizations, have this in their system. So I feel like this should always just be mandated just to make sure that no one loses their life because of a mistake or someone overlooking what the documentation says or forgetting to write what time the patient had medications and things of that nature. Session 2, what I learned about myself. While reflecting during Section 2, I learned that I feel more confident about my character than I had realized before. I feel that I'm a very honest, compassionate, caring, and optimistic person. These are the positive things. When asked if I would want to reside under my own care, my answer was no, due to my lack of medical knowledge. If it was based upon my character alone, I would absolutely be okay with residing under my own care. But because I have not gone through all the school that I planned to achieve before I actually start my career, I would not want to be my own patient right now. I realize that one of my fears is the anxiety over patients being happy with me. This is something I want to talk about more in this next slide. Overcoming my fear of anxiety. So before I get into what the actual slide says, I'll go ahead and say that I just have anxiety about people in general and what they think because I have this feeling like I just want everyone to always get along and things to go right. And I know this is unrealistic, but in my mind, when things don't go that way, it gives me anxiety. So I read an article that offered some very sound advice pertaining to anxiety of the unknown, which really resonated with me. The article was about overcoming anxiety in new situations. I learned that one of the first and most important steps is to recognize the deficit that you have in this new situation. I then read that once the person recognizes the incompetence and anxiety, they can then take the steps to alleviate themselves of the stress involved, using many different outlets, including breathing, meditation, further research upon the deficit, and more. So basically, in my mind, what that meant was that if you can figure out exactly what's going on with you and you realize the anxiety and you realize the reasons why, you can then research more and figure out which way suits you and your personality best to make this better and continue on to face your fears and really get over them hopefully by the end of it. I plan to. Session 3, the scenario week. In Session 3, we were given the scenario which ultimately caused me to ask myself this question. Would I fess up to making a mistake that nobody would know about otherwise? I prayed and meditated on the question and realized that my integrity was much greater than my fear of getting into trouble. The answer was yes, I would tell the truth for several reasons. We also were asked how we would conduct our own organization if given our own organization. Researching that led me to learning a lot about the honesty policy that most nurses are held to, and I agree that I would include those same guidelines within my facility. And to go into a little more detail briefly about why I would fess up, some of the several reasons would be because it could hurt the patient or their family. Even if the patient ended up okay, like it said in our scenario, They could think that there was something wrong with them the whole time, when in reality it was a mistake that I made. And I know that God will want me to come clean about that. And I know that if I did come clean, my employer would probably actually trust me more. And I'm a firm believer that what's done in darkness does come to light. So, Session 3, another interesting perspective. As I was researching, I learned the importance of reporting false documentation to the board. At first, I thought I would simply terminate a nurse who falsified documentation and kept it hidden. I had not understood the importance of reporting this crime. I learned from my state's nursing board, the Georgia Board of Nursing, I live in Georgia, that if an employee is simply terminated, they can just begin another nursing job elsewhere. Under those circumstances, the new employer would have no idea of the nurse's history of dishonesty. For that reason, I concluded that one of the punishments involved if I ran my own organization is that I would mandate that anyone who is not forthcoming about their mistake or falsification be reported to the board. Session 4, our interview week. This was my favorite week. For week 4's assignment, I interviewed my great aunt who was a nurse, Cheryl Brown. I learned of many medical terms that she uses and hears echoing through the halls of her job. Some examples of these include myocardial infarction, which is like a heart attack, hypertension, dosages, daily new order, chest films, etc. I learned of a process that our workplace uses to make sure they do not mistake documentation, called the 5 rights. The 5 rights is number 1, the right med, 2, right route, 3, right dosage, 4, right patient, and 5, right time. I loved that. I never heard of that before, and this was hard for me this week because I've never worked in the medical field. So whenever I wrote this paper on the interview, I really had to try to put myself in my aunt's shoes and picture her day-to-day life and ask her a lot of questions just to get a feel on what her side of things is as a nurse, like you had asked us to do. Session 4, Biblical Worldview. This was due to the interview that I conducted. One of the things that my aunt told me is caring for all people is rewarding. Although at this point in life, when the family has extended themselves as far as possible and can no longer give the elders the full attention that is needed, we are there to take the ball and run with it. It's very rewarding. I would like to share a Bible verse that I learned that correlated with this. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters, with absolute purity. That's Timothy 5:1-2, the Holy Bible, New International Version. Helping our neighbor is a virtue that God gives us by nature, and He encourages us through intuition and even through His Word to be of help to those in need. Taking on the job of a nurse, in my opinion, is answering God's call. I'm hopeful that when I begin my career, I will be filled with the Holy Spirit and humble myself upon my patients as Jesus did when He washed the feet of His followers. My plan for making myself an asset is I will spend as much time as I feel is necessary learning about every bit of medical information pertaining to my occupation as I can. I'll always stay humble because I feel that being arrogant or overconfident can cause for rushing, which increases the risk of mistakes. I will always pray and keep God on my mind and in my heart while I'm on duty, as I feel my Lord will always lead me in the right direction. I will always double check all information. I will do all that I can to be aware of medications and illnesses that are frequently confused between each other so that I can be on guard when I come across them. I learned that the confusion of 2 medication names that look or sound alike can have disastrous consequences, and this is what I hope to avoid. Thank you for watching my presentation, and this class truly was a blessing. Have a great next course. Here's my references. I'm going to leave it on the screen just for a second.